What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your very special tiefling host for some RPG horror stories. Speaking of, I received a lot of very lovely tiefling art from y'all. Your tieflings look immaculate and amazing. I love them to bits. This is a little bit of a strange request, but I think tieflings look really cool. If you have a tiefling of your own, you can either leave a link in the comments below or email it to me. I want to see tieflings. I think tieflings look really cool. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get to the first RPG horror story for today. The Board Game Evenings of Horrors Part 2. Experienced player lies to join a game specifically for beginners and tries to speedrun it. It goes from bad behavior over cheating to straight up lying again. Hello again, people. First part, please read the one for the context of the event. Note, the story contains a lot of cheating, some attempted guilt tripping, I think, major narcissist behavior. This is the same writer that talked about how they had a crazy lady try to steal them away and basically said that gay men don't exist. The same story writer and the same story. So this is part 2 and I'm super excited to read it. Just a quick reminder, this is not a continuation of part 1, but a different story which played at the same place with some of the same people. And be aware that we played Death House from Curse of Strahd, so spoilers ahead. After the last horror story happened, there were just good games for at least 2 months for me at the board game event. I'll just mention it again because yes, they had good games and they had a lot of them. The day where the story took place started off as usual and I didn't really think about playing pen and paper that day, but well, things changed. The organizer and his co-workers had openly advertised a very beginner-friendly game for D&D that day, as well as 4 other stories. But life really hated them that day. When my boyfriend and I arrived, we passed by them and overheard that 4 out of the 6 people who would usually DM for them got sick, so we were lacking at least 3 GMs. One of them was the guy who was supposed to run the advertised game. My boyfriend, being the nice and direct guy that he was, turned me around and sent me back to them with the instruction to save their day or something like that. He was just nice like that. So I asked if I can help. Since I was a regular participant at the event and we had already talked about GMing there, they just didn't run a test game with me so far, they decided to just give it a try and let me GM the game. I assumed the other option would have been not doing that broadly advertised game. The other 2 GMs had regular games running. So I was handed the module for the story, the Death House. Well, 80% true since they had already changed it, and a folder with the pre-made characters. I asked if I can change more about the module, or to presume there might be things in there I wouldn't like. They said yes and told me that maybe a bit less fighting and more creative problem solving would be good. That was exactly what I wanted to hear, since I basically play pen and paper for working with creative ideas. So I began setting up my first GM game with random people ever. I have to say that I was very nervous and a bit overexcited. I might explain why I overlooked so much. Now, let's introduce the cast of the story. Reoccurring, the organizer. Ranger, male, cleric, female, nice couple in their mid to end 30s. New but very enthusiastic players. Paladin, seriously a bad player and a person. A guy who was in his late 20s. 2 more players that don't really play a relevant part of the story, and of course me. This time as mentioned as a GM. Since my game had been heavily advertised, it didn't take long until I had 9 people there, all of whom wanted to play, though I could water that down to 4 pretty fast. 3 people were veterans who I already knew from the other games. They just wanted to play and each one asked nicely to fill out the empty spots if there were some left. It was not usually. I just got 3 at once, because the 2 other games still had to be cancelled. The other 2 guys were a different story. Both were around 16, seemingly friends and came off pretty annoying to begin with. As I mentioned that we had 6 players and I had only 5 seats on purpose, they started making comments about how Cleric, the only woman, should go do women things instead and let the guys play nerdy stuff. I get they're rude 16-year-olds and you know that's just a general stereotype, angsty rude 16-year-olds, but like anybody can be into nerdy stuff. It's not a woman thing, it's not a man thing, it's not an anyone thing. Nerdy stuff are just hella cool. Like for me, like I don't care who you are, I don't care where you're from, I just want to shove D&D in your face and like get you to try it at least once because I think it's so cool and I want all my friends to try it. Range immediately called him out on that and told him to stop. Like teenagers tend to do, they just laugh it off with a "make us stop." Well, I just pulled the folder with the character sheets away from them and thanked them for volunteering to leave. They thought this was a joke, until I told them they broke the rules before the game even started and couldn't play both anyway, so they should leave. They did so with protest, but at least they did. Next thing I found out that I just exchanged one horror story for another because they were really sexist players, but that's not my story to tell. Holy crap, red flag averted. Well, I mean, this RPG horror story still was written, so not all red flags, but at least some. After they left, I gave the others a quick rundown on the basic rules, and they began to pick characters. A few minutes later, I was about to ask one of the three waiting to join when a 10th person showed up and asked if he could still join. If I knew what was about to come, I should have declined, but I'm no fortune teller. I asked him the questions presented on the rule sheet for the game. The first was if he was new to pen and paper in general. He told me that he played D&D before at another table there, but that only been his second game in total, which I would still consider pretty new. I then asked if he had played or read The Death House before, which he declined. So I welcomed him at the table and told him to pick one character from the big folder of pre-made characters. Paladin was confused and told me that he made a character with the GM from part 1 and wanted to reuse that one. Technically, the rules for the game specified that no one was supposed to bring their own character, but I knew what the rules for making the pre-made ones were, so I offered to check if he fitted the rules. Might have been stupid, but I tried to be nice. And if another GM already signed it off, it couldn't be that bad, right? I later asked that, and it was obviously another lie. He happily gave me the sheet, and I only needed to take one look at it to realize it wouldn't fit any rule. The one thing that fitted was that he was level 3. We played at level 3 to make the house easier. But the rest, at that moment, I had no idea what he was to begin with. Later, I found that he was a variant human, Hexadin, and rolled for stats, which were already 4 things not allowed in the game. I can't say for sure anymore, but I remember he didn't have the Paladin starting equipment. I'm pretty sure there was more off about it, but you get the point. I keep hearing about Hexadin being super overpowered and stuff. I think I'll try to avoid that, mainly because I've played Warlock and I play a lot of Warlock and I should probably try to mix it up. Maybe play a Sorcerer, or just Paladin by itself, or a Druid. I need to make a Druid. Druid sounds so much fun, dude. Like a Warforged Druid. Like a Warforged Druid. And all of my shapes are mechanical when I shapeshift and stuff, like wild shape. Oh my god, that'd be so dope. I would love that. Anyway, sorry, let's continue. So basically I had to tell him that I was sorry, but his character was so unfitting for the game that I could not allow them. I told him that he could of course use him another time, but for that day he would need to take a pre-made one. He didn't take that well and argued for it anyway, but after I took like 10 minutes to explain him the rules and why a character did not fit even one, likely still didn't buckle, he relented. He took the folder and looked through it while muttering to himself that all the characters there were extremely weak, not optimized, and didn't fit his idea. I was more focused on getting the game going, so I didn't say anything. That should have been a big red flag, but I just thought he was an overenthusiastic new player who was annoyed that his first self-made character was not allowed. I was wrong. I'm personally under the impression that you don't need to make characters that are optimized. As a DM, I feel like it's your due diligence that you should make the session revolve around the players for the session. And even if you have a bunch of characters that aren't optimized, they should still be facing a challenge that is enough for them to handle without forcing them or making them be required to be specifically optimized in one way or another. A good DM would just make a session that is balanced for the party for the CR level. A great DM will take in consideration what each player has and try to build a session where they could use those abilities. You have a player that's really good at stealth, you might want to add a stealth section so that the one player that's really good at stealth can do that. You have a player with a lot of illusion spells, give them a sandbox, an open sandbox to be able to use the tools that they have in order to use them exceptionally. Forcing the players to play optimized builds is very not fun because it sort of boils down the creativity and it removes that, expunges it entirely for the sake of optimized top tier actions or builds or whatever. And in my opinion, that sort of removes a lot of the fun of D&D. To be able to create a character that fits your fantasy. While I was reading through the module the last time, Cleric, from my point of view, was still in the process of choosing which subclass she wanted to be, and Paladin finally picked up Vengeance Paladin. He then looked over to Cleric and just picked up all the sheets in front of her, besides the life domain Cleric she was holding, and put them back in the folder. I was getting ready to call him out on this, but never did, because Cleric happily said that she would take that class. Not sure if she even noticed what he did. I'm not sure if Paladin tried to force her into the subclass or if he was misjudging the situation and just wanted to help. But even if the latter was true, it was a bit rude to not ask her first if she was done. To flavor her dwarven Cleric up a bit, Cleric made her an old grandmotherly type and asked if she could have a few packages of cookies and rations. Of course! I would regret that. Last thing I told him was that I wouldn't be strict with the game rules and the module, since it's supposed to be fun and nothing else. They all laughed and told me they didn't really know the module or the rules, so they wouldn't even notice. I could tell Paladin was not happy with this. Now, on one hand, I feel like Paladin maybe was trying to be polite and just kind of putting away all the sheets, but it also could be also malicious. The only sheet that she was left was the life cleric, almost as if Paladin is trying to encourage her to play that one that she's holding and not the other subclasses. There's so many domains for cleric to play. Play whatever the hell you want, they're all so cool. Maybe some of them are kind of weak. I don't know. I haven't played cleric myself, but I really should. You know what? I'm making a declaration. My next character has to either be a druid or a cleric, just so I can experience what they're like, because it sounds like a lot of fun, and I should play one of them. Maybe I could even play the subclass of cleric that's a druid. What is it? Nature domain? I think. Yeah, I could just play nature domain and be a cleric that's kind of like a druid. That'd be perfect. After this more or less rocky start, we finally played the game. The players were traveling late at night through a forest as fog creeped in and engulfed them. Then they saw the lights of a house in the distance and walked straight towards it. Just my way to jumpstart a one-shot. Arriving at the house, I tried to build up some atmosphere, while Paladin asked if he saw any children around. Oddly specific that he asked for children, but whatever. I told him no, so he went straight to the door. But Ranger insisted on sneaking around the house first and look if someone was there. Paladin told him that this was stupid because it was definitely a haunted house and nobody lived here. A good way to kill atmosphere. Ranger did it anyway and rolled well, so he got into the garden without making any noise. Paladin was surprised as I described a neatly trimmed garden and a tool shed that I just made up on the spot. But the most annoying thing to him was that I described multiple figures moving in the first floor of the house. Again, for atmosphere. When Ranger returned, Paladin talked over him that this were like the ghosts who haunt the house and asked if he could finally get in there. Since I told him it was going to be a bit like a haunted house, he knew this. But I still told him to stop talking over people. Curiously, he did, and stop repeating the haunted house stuff. We all had seen horror movies before, but we didn't need to be reminded. This made him stop saying this, but still behave like he was playing a computer horror game. This seemed to be a thing with some new players. It's perfectly natural to want to try to gamify everything, and even something like D&D, right? If you have gamer brain, your gamer brain just can't turn off sometimes. But when it comes to playing D&D, at times, you have to just kind of relax. Turn the gamer brain off. Not everything has to be optimized, or efficient, or this or that, or use, like, gamer strats. Sometimes it's fine to just be immersed in a story. After all, D&D is or at least the way I define it, is like a collaborative storytelling medium. It is a game, but you're also telling stories, and stories about the characters you're playing, and the world you're in, and the things they do, and the horrible, terrible horrors and demons and ghosts that you fight. It became obvious that something was off with him when they entered the house. When the party was searching the first floor and collected funny items from everywhere, like soap and a cookie box, he wanted to go straight upstairs, which he did, and went to the room that was supposed to be the library. If you know the module, that's where a secret door is, but he walked into a room on the first floor instead. Well, I wanted to mess with the players a bit, and since the house was alive, I thought it would be funny to give them a 1 in 20 chance to step into a room and come out of a random room on the first 2 floors. He was just the first one to get this effect. Instead of being or playing confused, he accused me of railroading their exploration of the house. He was just the first one to get this effect. Instead of being or playing confused, he accused me of railroading their exploration of the house. It was not completely out of thin air, since he wanted to explore the second floor and I teleported him back down. It was still quite rude. I had no intention of telling him what happened mechanically, so I just ignored the comment. It happened again later and the others roleplayed their confusion well. The good thing about this was that he didn't venture off again. Likely since he didn't know where I could teleport him, I chose the first 2 floors specifically because they're harmless. They went upstairs and searched the library together. He asked if there were any markings or secret door anywhere because it's a library in a haunted house. Of course there must be a secret door behind bookshelf. Well, he rolled way too low to find it, and since the others were more interested in the history of the house, they didn't find it either, which visibly pissed him off, and he demanded to redo his roll multiple times, while maniacally searching the walls. At some point, I just let him and he finds a secret door, but has no idea how it will open. He starts testing all the books there, and gets frustrated when the door wouldn't open. Cleric pointed out that he hadn't tried just pulling on it, and well, the door opens. I wanted this to be easy, so I changed the part beforehand. Funny enough, he tried it the way the book suggested. Or better, it slowly got very suspicious. Problem was, it was 1 hour into the first game there, and I didn't want to confront someone that early. Though I should have talked with him, but, you know, hindsight. If the player is clearly following the module, like word for word, verbatim, you probably should have asked them like to step aside for like a few seconds and just say, hey, listen, I get it, you know the module, but don't follow the module. I'm reward the whole thing, because you never know who already played the module, who haven't. And if the OP is just trying to simplify it easier for the session, just for the event, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I could really see how OP could get annoyed with Paladin, because Paladin is just following some sort of a strat, some sort of a guide, instead of just simply playing D&D to play D&D. It's just kind of weird, you know? We did our usual break then, and everybody else left the room, but he stayed. Since I had a slight suspicion, I took my notes with me. When I came back, he was reading something on his phone, but turned it off when he saw me. I was pretty sure I saw a page from the monster manual, but I let it slide. Even if you looked up the monsters, I just changed them all the time anyway. The group got back into playing, and after some more exploration, went to the 3rd floor. He was immediately suspicious of armor there, which in a normal module would be animated. But when Cleric hit it with a sacred cookie, yes, a cookie, nothing happened. And Paladin poked the armor several times, waiting for it to attack him. And it just didn't. Though the noise animated something else instead. Paladin searched the walls for secret doors again, which was getting a bit too obvious then. His roll was pretty good, but he still didn't find one. When another player tried to open the door, he couldn't because it had sealed itself. Then the shadowy figure of a woman came through the wall, and Paladin screamed. He attacked it and rolled before I'm halfway done. I told him that if he wanted to attack, we had to roll initiative first. He was dead set on being able to attack first, and his explanation was, I rated my action for that. Okay, so I don't know how the DMs handle it, so if you handle it a different way, you can let me know in the comment section below. But me, typically, unless the players sneak up on somebody, I typically don't let them ready an action. And if they want to ready an action when they sneak up on somebody, I just let them have a surprise round. And because of that, it just, plays things out naturally. But if something comes out of the wall and you initiate, have to roll for initiative, let the DM first finish explaining it, or agree with the DM ahead of time that you're ready. If this is something that new players are supposed to be for, and this guy apparently never played this thing, he's kind of self-reporting when he's like, all right, I'll just ready an action already. I'm ready to attack immediately, DM. 100% DM. The guy's turning a fun mystery into a speed run. It doesn't really make sense at this point. He's skipping cutscenes and speed running all the strats, trying to animation cancel through the cutscene, basically. I just allowed him to attack once for free. Didn't want to argue for the reasons below. And looking at the initiative, he would have come last. So he rolled and got a good roll. Smites and rolls damage dice. He rolled really well for the damage as well, and proclaimed that he had killed the undead. I laughed and then described that his weapon going right through it and only his holy flame damaging it. So after his attack, the ghost was still there. He lectured me immediately that this was more than enough damage to kill a spectre, and then not immune to physical damage. First, who said this was a spectre? And second, it definitely was not a spectre or anything straight from the monster manual. I was more than sure by then that he knew the story really well, or I had looked up stuff in the break. But things didn't work out for him anyway, because this was supposed to be a roleplay encounter and not a straight up fight as in a book. So before the story started, I turned the spectre into a ghost with maximum HP and immunity to physical damage, because why not? But they would only attack someone if they hit it first, so that they might get this is way too powerful to kill, but it wouldn't TPK them outright. The plan was to make them talk to it and calm it that way. Well, back to the fight. The ghost turn came and attacked the paladin. Of course, as if karma would want to punish him for his obvious cheating, I rolled a natural 20. After I visibly gathered a lot of dice from across the table I was about to roll, he told me that I had to re-roll because he had cast protection from evil and good on himself. I feel like something was wrong about that, since he had like 3 minutes to tell me that, and only did it after seeing the amount of dice I was about to roll. So I took a look at the sheet. His character didn't even have that spell. They just printed the chosen spell, not the whole list, so he couldn't cast it. Of course, as I told him that, he insisted on being able to cast it because he would have taken it if he had made this character, and he totally forgot to mark the spell slot for that one for Smite. Sure. I think I already made up my mind about kicking him after this fight. God, this guy is just pulling all the punches, doesn't he? What else is he gonna do? Say he has some sort of a homebrew item that makes him invincible and he does like 9,000 damage or some shit? I don't know, dude. It's crazy. This story is wild. I was a little fed up with this at this point and told him to stop the nonsense. He just grumbled about being given a way too weakened uses of a character that he chose, but relented since he could argue for this point and I was rolling the dice. I rolled as well as he did, but with double the amount of dice. He went down unceremoniously in one attack. His face turned red with anger the second I told him so. Cleric's turn came up next, and Paladin basically screamed at her to do her job and heal him back up. But she had another idea prepared. While I had been busy with Paladin, she wanted to use her channel divinity and cookies to calm this angry spirit and try talking with it. I couldn't even open my mouth before Paladin just jumped in and told her that her ability couldn't do this. He then went on to tell her she couldn't waste her turn that way, but heal him so that the only useful character could kill that undead, says the Paladin to the cleric. Dude, this guy is such a pretentious prick. The only useful character. Bruh, you went down in a fight immediately. Well, how useful are you if you just go down after one single ghostly slap? You're not that useful, are you? He's not using his utility, he's not using his skilling, he's not using anything. He just tries to smash everything he sees and metagames everything. Ranger and I simultaneously told him to shut up and let me decide that. I was immediately found of this idea and let her roll for it. She used her inspiration on it and rolled. A natural 20. Karma goes both ways. I laughed and then gave her a short and spontaneous dream sequence where she talked with a ghost while guiding its soul into the light with more cookies. Paladin was basically fuming at this point, likely because he had been useless, and Cleric got a beautiful scene, all the info they needed, and a new inspiration. Cleric did her job then and healed him with a cookie before I called for a break again after like 15 minutes. I was just done with Paladin's antics. This time, Ranger stayed and asked me if I can remove Paladin from the game. His list of reasons completely aligned with mine, which was good and reinforcement that it wasn't just me. So I told him that I wanted to talk with Paladin anyway. Turns out Paladin wanted to talk with me as well. Or better, he wanted to talk at me. I had no chance to start a conversation when he already threw quite a lot of accusations at me that I was 1. Slowing down the party and him especially, okay? 2. Purposely changing the story to screw him over. I didn't. 3. Not playing by the official material and rules. True, but I told him up front. 4. Showing favoritism towards Cleric because she was a woman. The first part, maybe. The second, what? 5. Having no idea of how D&D is played right. Sure. I'm sure there was a 6th accusation, but I forgot it by now. As he was catching his breath to likely go on, I asked him if he was done. It might have been more about my tone, but something made him stop. Instead of running down my long list of problems about him, I just casually asked if he lied to me before the story, before I could tell now that he was not new and sure as hell knew the entire module. Paladin just shrugged and told me that he really liked the end of the module and wanted to get there, so he could show the new players of how D&D is supposed to be played right. His way of powerful characters was not an accident, but on purpose, since he knew what module we'd be playing. I asked again if he read the game rules I handed him before this story. Paladin responded that he did, but didn't care about them. According to him, most of my games were just a roadblock, since it wasn't the type of game he came here to play. He could have gotten that one, just not the one a specific day. So he tried to speed up the game to get to the basement, to be able to play a real game. What I got was that he wanted to win the story by cheating, and also shows off how great his character was. My response was that he can get his stuff and leave the table, because I'm not going to allow this nonsense anymore. Good! That's what you should say to somebody. You know, I know we know a lot about the backstory of the LP and everything, being like gay and with a boyfriend and stuff, but it's hilarious that the Paladin is accusing the DM, the gay DM, to give favoritism to a woman because he's like, what, into her or something? It's just silly, dude. It's absolutely silly. This stuff is just nonsense. This guy is just so butthurt because he wants to be able to speedrun the D&D game and finds the rules are just a roadblock and everything. People are here just to have fun. The guy's filling in for a missing DM. He's not here to give the Paladin his power fantasy or anything like that. No D&D is real D&D. The D&D is what you have at the current table with the people that you're playing, with players and the DM in your current group. There's no real D&D out there. D&D is what you make it. Paladin wants to play games that are more power fantasy optimization stuff. If he wants to do that, he can go do that, just at a different table. He's going to a game expecting the DM to bend the rules for him. Why? He's been nothing but a nuisance the whole time. He's unpleasant as hell. He done nothing positive for the game except trying to rush it and speedrun it and be a rude butthole to everybody. This confused him a lot, and he told me that I can easily fix all his problems by sticking to the official rule and stop messing around with the rules. That way we would be done earlier and had more time to play the good parts of the story. Oh, and of course by letting him play his way too powerful character. I made it clear that I was not talking about the game anymore, but about him straight up lying to me multiple times and disregarding the rules, the other players, and me as a GM. His response was to tell me to not set up this waste of time then, and instead focus on providing games for real players. Oh, this guy can go fuck himself, dude. This guy can actually go straight up fuck himself. What a pretentious prick. What an absolute dickhead. What a complete and utter asshole to deal with. I really hope you kicked him out. I really hope you kicked him out. Real players, fuck you, buddy. You're the most pretentious, obnoxious, the most annoying guy to ever be. Have fun finding real players when nobody wants to have you at the fucking table because you're such a prick about everything. Jesus fucking Christ, dude. What an absolute jackass. What a jackass of a character. I just asked the organizer to come over since I didn't feel like I had the authority yet to kick someone from the event entirely. He just breached the rules in so many ways. When the organizer arrived, Paladin began to tell him all the problems he had with my playstyle. I had to do nothing but wait while Paladin basically took himself out. He was not even halfway done when the organizer asked me if I wasn't supposed to be GMing a game. I have to say, nice way to get him back in the room so the others could play in peace. There's a saying that I heard a long time ago. I'm not sure 100% how it goes, but like if you give somebody enough rope, they'll hang themselves with it or something along the lines of that. Basically, if you give them enough room to just talk themselves into a corner, they'll put themselves on a corner and make himself just painted as a bad guy, right? You just let the guy speak and he keeps bringing up more how he is the problem. Just let him speak continuously and rant and everybody can see how much of an issue this guy is. Long story short, Paladin tried to argue with the organizer as well, but got kicked out of the event shortly after. I assumed he still thought I was the problem because I was not GMing the type of game he and he alone wanted to play. I have no problem with the style he wanted to play, but my god, go buy a package of social skills before he dares show up again. Last thing said, Paladin was also never seen again. He got permanently banned from playing there, but played the rest of the story in nice 3 hours and all had quite a lot of fun. Paladin's character died falling down the stairs. It happens. Ranger heroically sacrificed his character to save his wife as the final battle. As cleric, sacred cookies became a running gag that survived way past the story. We even had physical sacred cookies on the table when the next horror story eventually appeared. They looked like holy symbols and were made with holy water. Cleric was just a cool person. Hope you enjoyed this story and thanks for reading. Thank you, OP, so much for posting this story. This was so fun to just read through because it sounds like there were a lot of crazy nonsense that happened at the gaming event. There's nothing wrong with wanting to play modules as they were written and how they're running and stuff without modifying too many things at all. There's nothing wrong with that playstyle at all. It's Paladin's attitude and the way they behaved at the table that is entirely wrong. Play however you want to, just don't be this Paladin. And with that, that's gonna be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.